for a gift package that includes our famous bacon wrapped filet mignon, our delicious air chilled chicken breast, burgers, franks, sides, and desserts, all for just $89.99. That's 64% off. Order now to include 4 more burgers. This exclusive TV offer is our best of the season. And
someone. Oh, there we go. 1 second. All right, we'll go on holding by the Book of Leviticus Chapter 17. Again, we're going holding by the Book of Leviticus Chapter 17. We're in verse 15. We spoke last week about the difference between a nevela and a treifa, an animal that dies either by itself without someone killing it properly, without proper shechit, as we would call it. But a treifa is something different, right? Treifa, normally a person would say, well, it's treif. Well, it means most people today would say, well, what does it mean that it's treif? They'll say it's not kosher, right? They'll say that it's not kosher. Now, what does that mean today? What does that mean today? A treifa is an animal that dies, that has some sort of, either it's got a disease, got a broken limb, it's got a broken limb. It will have a let's say missing limb. It's something where the animal's not going to live. It's not going to live more than a year. So there is a difference again between a treif and a nevela. A nevela is an animal that dies not with shechita, not with proper ritual slaughter. That was the word I was looking for. Right? It's not going to die by ritual slaughter. It will die either it had a heart attack or something else happened to it, but it didn't die. It didn't die properly, right? Let's say better. It didn't die according to ritual slaughter. So again, the Torah says, Kol nefesh asher toichel nevela treifa be'ezrach beger kibes begadav rachatz b'mayim tamei ada erev v'tayim. Right. So here the Torah says again, and every soul that eats carrion, right, eats a animal that dies, not the ritual slaughter, or that which was torn, right, that was ripped apart, or this treifa means it has whatever, something wrong with it. It's got a punctured lung. It's got it's missing a vital internal organ. It's got a hole in the brain, something like that. Whether a native or a stranger shall both wash his garments, bathe himself in water, be unclean till the evening, then he shall be clean. So a person came in contact with it, right, or you ate it, right? There's a whole question exactly what it meant. To eat it doesn't mean you have to swallow it or it just goes in the throat. When a person becomes impure, either case, we're talking about a native or a stranger, right? Either a ger toshav, most likely a ger toshav, someone who lives amongst Jewish people, a non-Jew that doesn't convert. So this would apply, right? Seemingly, this would apply over here. But again, we are talking about a specific time period, i.e., when the temple existed. Because when the temple does not exist, we don't have that level of purity and impurity. People have asked the question, let's go back to that. Well, yeah, it'd be great. right? If we'd be great to go back to that, but we don't have a temple in Jerusalem, so that. So the mikvah only takes away certain level of impurity, right? It will take away some level of impurity, certainly not this type of impurity. So even if a person, let's say today, came in contact, with dead body, or in this case, they ate, they ate, something not kosher here. So that doesn't affect them, right? That level, sorry, let's say better, that level of purity or impurity does not affect them the same way as it would back when the temple existed. So even if we'd love to go back to that, and take on these stringencies or practical laws, let's say, going back and what's going to happen over here when a person eats this type of animal, right? Doesn't apply, right? That will not apply today. By the time the temple definitely did apply, right? So the question was, as Rashi brought out over here, question was, when does the person, what level, or when does the person become impure? So Rashi wanted to say it's talking about a bird, talking about a clean bird over here that wasn't slaughtered properly. Can we talk about an animal because we spoke about an animal before, and it's going to be forbidden over here, or there's going to be a level of impurity once the food passes through the gullet, i.e., it's swallowed, right? But doesn't defile somebody by touching it, which is interesting. You might think, oh, if a person touched it, very good, right? Maybe it becomes impure at that level also. Nope, right? We definitely don't hold that, according to this. But there will be an issue, right? There will be an issue if a person ate it, right? That's what. So we spoke about those levels of impurity. We spoke about that last week. One other thing I do want to see, the Or Chaim HaKadosh over here, one of the great commentaries more than 100 years ago. The Or Chaim over here, Or Chaim HaKadosh here says, what does it say over here? What is the Torah? We're going to be very specific here. The Torah says, 1 second. Yeah, the Or Chaim HaKadosh here says, the Torah says, Kol Nefesh. The Torah says, Ki Nefesh Kol Basar. Right? Let's quote it better. It says, every soul. Right? Ki Nefesh Kol Basar. Damo B'nafshu. Anyone, seemingly anyone over here, every soul that eats either an animal that's nevela, that is, sorry, I quoted the wrong verse here. It says kol nefesh, yeah, kol nefesh asher tochon nevela treifa. It says every single person, right? Every soul, right? Literally every soul, right? Every soul that eats carrion, an animal that is not ritually slaughtered, right? Here we're talking about a bird, or it had some characteristic made it into a treifa, again, which means it's not going to live for 12 months. And a stranger, a native, a stranger, right? Talking about a ger toshav over here. If they ate it, they have to wash the garments, lay themselves in water, being clean until the evening. Right, go to the mikvah, and then they'll be clean. They'll be clean at night. Now, it comes on the Or Chaim HaKadosh here. I find it here. Yeah. He's very specific here. It says kol nefesh. It says every person, right? Literally every soul, right? Every soul that eats of it, including what we said in verse 10, right? Let's go back to verse 10. Right? What did verse 10 say? It says, Ish Ish Beis Israel, every single person from the house of Israel, and the stranger lives amongst them, that would eat blood, etc. Anyone who eats it, you're going to get spiritually cut off. So it's interesting. It's interesting. It says over there in verse 10, every single person among the Jewish people and a stranger amongst them that eats blood. Okay, so it comes on the Orchai Makador, says, go back over there. And he says, when it says kol nefesh, doesn't say kol ishvish, doesn't say every single person. What does it say? It says kol nefesh, right? It says every soul that eats from it. Doesn't say every single person. So he says kol nefesh, including those we mentioned in verse 10, right? Go back to verse 10, which we just said. So he says there are 8 different levels. There are 8 different levels, as we've explained. And 2 are mentioned in general. We got 2 in Ezra and a ger, right? An Ezra is going to be a native, a ger, a stranger, i.e., what does it mean? A stranger, it means most likely a ger toshav. Over here, a non-Jew that lives amongst Jews, doesn't convert, right? Holds by the Noahide laws, or at least goes against idolatry. A whole difference of opinion exactly what the status is over here. But in general, it's talking about a ger toshav, right? It's talking about a ger toshav, and so interesting. It says over here, it says a ger and an Ezra, or an Ezra and a ger, right? Let's it says Ezra uba ger. Says somebody who's a native or a stranger. Now, comes on Chaim Makadosh over here. What's different? Is it a native, a stranger? Right? You got to say, well, 2 different things. A native, someone who dwells there, right? Literally dwells there, right? And Ezra, someone who like lives in the community, right? And a ger means like a stranger, a stranger. So what are we talking about over here? Are they interchangeable? Could an Ezra be a ger? Could someone who dwells there can be considered, let's say, ger, meaning a ger toshav, right? A non-Jew that lives there, either goes against idolatry or keeps the Noahide laws. So he says, very interesting. So he says, what's going on? We just said kol nefesh. We just said every single soul. Go back to verse 10. It says every single Jew, right? But what about over here? It says ger Ezra. So he says, if we want to be specific here, we want to look into this a little bit more, right? Want to be detailed over, let's say better. So it says Ezra hu beger. It says a native and a stranger. Now, what does that mean? It means whatever is included in being a stranger is also included in being a ger. And being so what's included in a native, whatever a native is, it's going to be the same. It's going to have the same law, right, so to speak. It's going to be the same law for a ger, right, for ger toshav. So ger toshav, in general, there's difference of opinion, as we said, what it is, whether they go against idolatry or they keep the Noahide laws. But it is very clear, according to the Rambam and others, there is no ger toshav today. We don't have the status. A non-Jew would not have the status of a ger toshav today, if they lived, even if they lived in Israel, amongst the Jewish people. And the reason is, there's a technical reason. And the technical reason is a ger toshav is dependent on Yovel, on the sabbatical year, right? On the sabbatical year. So if you don't have a sabbatical year, right? Jubilee year, right? Jubilee year, which is the 50th year. Sabbatical year we do have, right? That we have in Israel. Every 7 years is sabbatical year, where you can't, anyone who owns land cannot work the land. Not allowed to work the land. The Torah does say, someone who obviously holds by that will get a bumper crop. They're not going to starve. I mean, you have to have a lot of emunah b'tachon over here, but nonetheless, person who does that, a lot of farmers today that don't work their field in the seventh year. Okay, there are funds that help them, but you have to have a lot of faith and belief in God over here, because other people not going to hold by it, right? They're not going to hold by it. It's a big test, very, very big test. They're not going to hold by it. They're going to say we're going to lose out. First of all, we're not going to make any money, right? We can't make any money from anything. We can't plant any new crops. We can't have any new crops. Can't work the land. So basically, even after the sabbatical year, what do they have to do? So they're gonna replant, because it's gonna take time to harvest. So they're not gonna be able to work for a year. So they're gonna say we're gonna lose out. 100%, we're gonna lose out. Other people, that are gonna work the land when it's forbidden, they'll win out. It's a big test, right? It's a very big test. But it's clear. Let's just make this clear, that it is very clear, according to the Rambam and others, that since, even though we have a 7-year cycle, right, every 7 years, you're going to have a sabbatical year in Israel. It only applies in Israel, nowhere else. You're going to have a sabbatical year. A Jew cannot work the land. Very good. So if a Jew can't work the land, we don't have a few technical reasons why we don't have a Jubilee year. So a Ger Toshav, in order to be a Ger Toshav, it depends on the Jubilee year. So therefore, today, we don't have that status, right? There is no status of a Ger Toshav, today. There's status of a Noahide, yeah, a non-Jew that, goes against idolatry, holds by the Noahide laws, right? Holds by the Noahide laws. So there, if they want to, right? If they want to, they can go in front of a rabbinical court and declare they're going to keep the Noahide laws. Certainly not an obligation, right? Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. There is no obligation to do so. If they want to, they can. Okay, right? Should they? They don't have to. They certainly don't have to. Now, should they go in front of two people, in front of two witnesses, and say, I declare the Noahide laws, and I'm going to keep the Noahide laws to the best of my ability? It's a good thing to do, right? Definitely a good thing to do. They're holding by the Noahide laws. They're not going to convert. Okay. Obligation? No. There is no obligation. Now, some do a fancy thing. They'll have them go in front of a beis din. They'll declare that they're taking on the Noahide laws. Right? They give them a certificate. They frame it. Very good. Is there an obligation to do such a thing? No. There's no obligation. Is the piece of paper worth anything? I don't know. For the person, yeah. For the person, it might be worth something. Right? In other words, they're doing it. They're taking it seriously. They're going in front of a rabbinical court declaring that they're taking on the Noahide laws. Okay. It is worth something to the person. Let's say that's why they do it, right? It's worth it. They have this piece of paper signed by the rabbinical court. They get it framed, put on the wall. Very good. So for them, okay, worth something, right? It means they're taking it seriously. Now, do they have to do it? No. If they want to go in front of two people and do it, do they have to do it? No. Is it a good thing to do it? It's probably a good thing to do it, right? In other words, it shows that they're taking it seriously. Yeah, depending how seriously, whatever. But, for the person themselves, I think it's good, right? That kind of obligates them in different ways, right? But in the bigger scheme of things, right? In the bigger scheme of things, doesn't matter. So again, if the person says for themselves it matters, good. So let them do it, right? Let them go in front of a rabbinical court. Let them do it in front of two witnesses for them, in front of two witnesses, I don't have an issue with, right? They want to do it. I think it's a good thing to do. Going in front of a rabbinical court, no one says you have to, right? Nobody says you have to. Now, that being said, if someone wants to do it, they can do it. They certainly can do it. If it makes them feel better, if it makes them, let's say, stronger in their beliefs, it's solidified, I have it on paper, the rabbinical court signed on it, okay. right? So that is worth something, 100%. That is worth something. The people think that is worth something. Okay, so if a person who thinks it's worth something, do it. A person can do it, right? In the bigger scheme of things, if a person would go and tell a basin they did this in front of another basin, okay, what are they going to do for you? They'll say, okay, great, and nothing, right? So again, if it means something to a person, they should do it. If they don't want to do it, they don't have to. In the bigger scheme of things, is the piece of paper worth anything? In the bigger scheme of things, it's not worth anything. If it makes the person feel better, good, right? But there are people that do it, and which is fine, which is fine. But don't get carried away and think that it's something worth more than it is. Is it worth the piece of paper that's written on? It doesn't mean anything. It strengthens the person, okay, that's a value. If it's of value to the person, very good, right? So then it strengthens them, feels like they have greater obligation, fine. In the bigger scheme of things, right? In the bigger scheme of things, does it really matter? Doesn't matter, right? Doesn't matter. Piece of paper is written on, right? It is really not worth much. If it's worth it to the person, good. But, in general, it's not really worth so much. So, I got hammered for saying this, but it's true. People don't like to hear the truth. It's too bad, right? It's the way it is. No, person again, if a person walked into a rabbinical court and say, I want to do this, they're going to say you don't have to. You're going to say, no, but I want to. I want the rabbinical court sign off. Okay, right? So a lot of rabbinical courts that'll do it. Doesn't mean they're the best rabbinical court. Doesn't mean the worst rabbinical court. They can do it, right? It's not an issue. The question is if it's worth it to the person to do it. If it's worth it to the person to do it, okay, right? But you have to know what it is. You have to know what it's worth. Some people will tell you, no, it's the best thing to do, and you have to do it, and you have to have you get an obligation. No, there's no obligation, right? It's two things Kaufman can't stand. One is people misrepresent, and two, the people that lie. So someone gets on in a t-shirt, right, dressed up as a rabbi, dressed up in a t-shirt and says, in quotes, the Rambam, and it says, no, I have to do this when the verse itself, what the Rambam quotes is talking about Ger Tosha. The Rambam specifically says there a Ger Tosha has to go in front of a rabbinical court. Doesn't say no I, right? I also know how to read Hebrew. Does not say no I. So this person, took me to task and said, well, you can't say it's worth nothing. And I said, you can't say a Ger Tosha has an obligation today. That there's an obligation of Ger Tosha. He goes, yeah, I know that. I said, good. So I want you to go out. I want you to make a video. And or let someone interview you, doesn't really matter, and say what I said wasn't true. That the Rambam didn't say it. Because all you have to do is stop the frame. If you stop the frame, it says clear, Ger Tosha. Does not say Ben Noah. Big difference. Big difference. Right? So people want to hear me say, oh, you can't say that. And people have feelings. I understand. But you have to tell them what it's worth, that they don't have to do it. And there's no stats of Ger Tosha. Yeah, I know that. I know there's no stats of Ger Tosha. If they some moron, I'm going to call him a moron because that's what he is. Moron over here says, no, it's Ger Tosha. What do you mean it's Ger Tosha? Sorry, it's a Noah. The Rambam says Ger Tosha. If the Rambam says Ger Tosha, he means Ger Tosha. He doesn't say Ben Noah. He could have said Ben Noah. Easily could have said Ben Noah. Yeah, but didn't. That's not what the Rambam said, right? And there's no version of the Rambam that says that. Period. There's no version. Yeah, so I'm going to get hammered for saying it's not worth anything. And I'm going to hammer back and say, tell them the truth. Tell them what it says. Don't tell them what you want it to say. Don't mislead people. Tell them what it says. And if it doesn't say it, it doesn't say it. Period. That's it. So comes the law on the Orach Chaim HaKadosh here. And the Orach Chaim HaKadosh says, no difference. Whatever's included in a Ger Toshav over here is included in an Ezra. And vice versa. So it could be saying that an Ezra, what we call a native, is going to have the same status in this case as a Ger. And it has to be talking about a Ger Toshav. It cannot be talking about a convert. Wouldn't make sense. Wouldn't make sense because he's talking about the Jewish people here, right? That's what we said before, right? So as we said in verse 14, he's talking to Jews, right? So it wouldn't make any sense to tell me a ger. A ger is a Jew, right? Okay, might be certain things. Converts, can't do that. Jews do, okay, right? But if you're going to say, the Jewish people and you mention ger, there's going to be a problem here. Who's it talking about, right? By the 10 Commandments, by the laws of Shabbos, right? It mentions the Jewish people, and it mentions ger. So there's a whole discussion there in Exodus chapter 20, when it talks about Shabbos, and there's an obligation to keep Shabbos. There's a whole discussion there, and there's a whole discussion what that ger is talking about. Is it talking about a convert? If it's talking about a convert, you just said the Jewish people. You just mentioned the Jewish people. If you mention the Jewish people, is a convert a Jew? Convert's a Jew. Okay. Convert has certain limitations. There are certain limitations that a convert has, that a born Jew doesn't have. Okay. Yeah, but those are technical things. Those are technical things. It has nothing to do with, we discriminate and, and all this. They're technical things. We learn off certain verses that converts can't do. Okay. Yeah. So if it's talking about the Jewish people, and the Jewish people have to keep Shabbos, right? One of the 10 Commandments. And it says, ger asher b'sharecha. And it says, a ger in your gates. Who's it talking about? If you're going to tell me, it's talking about a ger toshav, right? If you want to tell me, it's talking about a non-Jew that lives amongst the Jewish people. Very good. Does a non-Jew who lives amongst the Jewish people have to keep Shabbos? Are they, they have to desecrate Shabbos. So the whole discussion. There's a whole discussion exactly who that's talking about. Right? Seemingly, a non-Jew who lives amongst the Jewish people can desecrate Shabbos. They have an obligation to desecrate Shabbos. They want to convert, very good. They don't have to. But you have to ask the question what it's talking about. That's a good question. Right? Either way, it's a good question. So the commentaries battle with that. Is it talking about convert? And if it's talking about a convert, what's the difference between convert and a Jew? Right? What would be the difference? Because if they're both the same, you don't need to tell me convert. Just tell me Jewish people. Right? Just tell me it only applies, it applies to Jewish people. And obviously it's going to include a convert. Right? That'd be very simple. They're part of the Jewish people. Okay. If you're going to tell me it's talking about a ger toshav, it's talking about a non-Jew who either goes against idolatry or holds by the Noahide laws, right? Whatever the definition of a ger toshav is. Very good. How does that apply? God's giving the Torah to the Jewish people. Why does Shabbos apply to them? It's a good question, right? It's a very good question over here. Now, that being said, so when that comes up, you have to know the context. Can't just say every time it says ger, it means ger toshav. Doesn't necessarily mean that. Could be talking about a convert. The question is, if it's already talking about the Jewish people, why does it mention a convert? Doesn't have to mention a convert. For sure, it doesn't have to mention a convert. Convert's part of the Jewish people. All right, tell me, okay, there are certain limitations. Very good. Maybe there are certain limitations, but doesn't matter. If you say I'm talking to the entire Jewish people, yeah, then you're talking about converts also, right? And this got into the whole discussion before, right, which we dealt with. In verse 10, right, it says verse 12, therefore it says the Jewish people, anyone who eats soul, and a ger b'soifel, right, and a ger that lives amongst the Jewish people, right, can't eat blood. Now, talking about a convert doesn't make sense. Does not make sense, right, because the convert's a Jew. It can't be talking about a convert. So it's talking about a non-Jew who lives amongst the Jewish people. So this is kind of a little bit misleading over here. Why? Because everyone's going to say, and I got hammered for this also, when we spoke about it, someone says, see, this rabbi says you can eat blood. Well, the Torah says you can't, right? Very good. Right? The Torah here says, chapter 17, verse 12, black and white. Right? Chapter 17, verse 12, Book of Leviticus, clear as day, it says, a ger, right? A ger, a stranger who lives amongst the Jewish people, right, cannot eat blood. Very good. Right? Now, even though the Torah says that, question is, what does that mean? Do we take that literally and say that, yeah, the Karaites will be very happy, right? Because you'll say, of course, the Torah says clear, a non-Jew can't eat blood. Okay, right? Blood can contaminate the soul. Very good. Can have an effect on the soul because the soul is in the blood. Okay, now let's ask a fundamental question. Does what a non-Jew eats, regardless, whether it's blood, non-kosher animals, does it affect the non-Jewish soul like a Jew? And we know that not to be true. We know, as Kli Yakar says, clear, talking about the laws of kashrus, right, in Leviticus chapter 10, right? It says over there, or chapter 11, one of the two, right? He says over there that a non-Jew is not going to do something that doesn't affect them, that has no effect on them. And how does he know? Because he says, you see, non-Jews eat all kinds of creepy crawly things, doesn't affect them in a negative way, maybe except for eating the bats in Wuhan, okay, but doesn't affect them in any way. So if it doesn't affect them in any way, why would a non-Jew do it? And I get this question all the time. I want to keep kosher, very good, doesn't apply to you. Doesn't affect you the same way, as a Jew, but I only want to eat clean animals. Okay. Yeah. With proper ritual slaughter. So it's like eating a placebo. You want to eat a placebo? Okay. Want to pay more money for a placebo? Very good. So the Kli Yakar over there says non-Jews not going to do it. Why are they not going to do it? Why wouldn't it make sense for a non-Jew to do it? Because it doesn't affect them. So a non-Jew is only going to do things that have an effect. A Jew, it affects. We are what we eat. One opinion. That's one opinion why we keep kosher. Right? Why we only eat kosher animals and have proper ritual slaughter. Why? Because it affects us. Has an effect on the soul. Hi, someone's going to say, come on, science never proven it. Right? Medicine's never proven it. Very good. Plenty of things. Science or medicine have not proved it. Doesn't mean it's not true. Right? I'm not saying this is the only reason. It's one reason. One possible reason. Very good. So even if science has never proven it, doesn't matter. We still have an obligation. We still have an obligation to do it. Again, that's not the only reason. Right? It could be other reasons, as well. But it's clear, the Gemara says clear that it has an effect on Jews. So meaning that it shouldn't affect a non-Jew. If it only affects a Jew, it doesn't affect a non-Jew. And let's say that's the reason, then for sure non-Jews don't have to do it. Right? As Kli Yakar says, they're not going to do anything. Non-Jews are going to take on something that does not affect them. If it doesn't affect them, why would they do it? Right? So a person will say, but the Torah says clear, wants me to eat non-clean animals. But who is that talking to? It's talking to Jews, not talking to non-Jews. And these laws passed down from Moses and Mount Sinai. It's talking to Jews. Right? So this we would ask a very fundamental question. Sure, it says a a ger gar b'soich, right? B'soich, that over there in verse 12, right? In verse 12, it says, v'ger hagar b'soich. Hold on. So very clear. All the Karaites jump up and down and say it's clear. It says any ger, any convert, right? Right. Well, we're not going to say it's convert here, but anyone. Anyone who lives amongst the Jewish people, right? i.e. a non-Jew, right? Who lives amongst the Jewish people. So therefore, what's going to happen? It says the can't eat blood. Very good. Well, let me ask the question: does eating blood affect a non-Jew? Right? That's the question. That is the question. So the Torah says clear, you can't eat it. Right? If it's talking about a convert, I got a big question. If it's talking about a convert, then what would I say? They're a Jew. So why are they singled out? So you have to answer why it says a convert living amongst the Jewish people. Very good. Yeah. But if they're already Jews, you don't have to tell me that. They're included. So either tell me they have to be excluded for a different reason. Maybe there's a technical reason that they're singled out. That the Torah has to tell me why a convert's mentioned, not just part of the Jewish people, right? Or you're going to tell me, what does a ger mean over here? It means a ger tosha, someone who lives amongst the Jewish people. Okay. Now, if we do understand that the laws of kashrus do not apply, let's say the laws of kashrus do not apply to a non-Jew, yeah? And let's say the reason is because it doesn't affect them. Doesn't affect them. If it doesn't affect them, then they wouldn't do it. Oh, but someone's going to say, come on. All the Karaites out there will say, you can't say that, can't use logic. The Torah says, right? The Torah says clear. Right? The Torah says clear. That's what we're talking about. Right? But if you know other information, that's where it gets dicey a little bit, or dodgy, as English would say. But if you know other information, you can't say straight away, face value, look, this is what it says. Okay, I understand what it says. But it has to be explained. It has to be understood. Right? Just like anything else. 100%. 100%, it has to be understood. Right? And if it's not understood the right way, then there's a problem. The rabbis interpret this, that. Okay. Well, let's understand. Let's understand if I know other information. If I have other information at my disposal, and I know by other things, maybe this is not going to apply. Okay. But, you don't know where it applies, where it doesn't apply, because the Torah doesn't tell me. Torah's a law book. Torah just tells me, eat this, don't eat that, applies to this, doesn't apply to that, right? I'll give you an example. We're going to see in Leviticus chapter 19 that the Torah says that in Parshas Kedoshim, the Torah says, there's an obligation to rebuke Amisecha, your people. Doesn't apply to a non-Jew. Doesn't mean a Jew has to rebuke a non-Jew for not keeping his mitzvahs, right? You can speak about that also. Spoken about that a lot. But in general, it says you have to rebuke your people. Then it says, Lo taseh alav chet, but you shouldn't bear the sin. You shouldn't bear the sin for it. $1 million question. What does that mean? What is the context? Now, someone will tell you wrongly, but someone will tell you, see, a non-Jew does something wrong, 100%. A non-Jew does something wrong.
Amen.
Sorry, a Jew does something wrong. You have an obligation to rebuke them. If you see them desecrate Shabbos, you don't have to warn them. They're out there watering their lawn, I don't know, fixing their car, doing whatever. You'll tell me. The verse says clear, I got to rebuke them. Got an obligation to rebuke them. Okay, there's only one problem. What does the end of the verse say? The end of the verse says so you don't bear the sin. We'll see in the next verse if I get there today. What does it mean you won't bear the sin? Simple explanation, it means can't embarrass somebody. If you rebuke them and you embarrass them, yeah? If you embarrass them, guess what? You get the sin now. You sinned over here. But it says, right? See, this is where you have to know other information. The Torah says you got to rebuke your people. Very good. And what happens? Let me throw out this idea. What happens? The person does not know how to rebuke. Let's say they're obnoxious. They say, hey, why are you doing that? Don't you know it's forbidden to do on Shabbos? Don't you know you're going to fry out forever? Don't you know you're going to get spiritually cut off? He's not saying all these things. This guy says, like, go jump in the lake. I'm going to do what I want. Right? Then you start quoting things and other things. You embarrass the person in the process. Let's say you embarrass them in the process. You don't get the mitzvah here. You embarrass them. So you could say, and this is an excuse a lot of people make, but it's not true. It's not true all the time, and that is, if a person does something if a person doesn't know how to rebuke. We're living in a generation, even in probably previous generations, that we do not know how to rebuke. If you don't know how to rebuke, you should be exempt from the mitzvah. Why? Because you're gonna transgress over here. You are gonna do something you shouldn't do. You're gonna make, in short, you are gonna make the situation worse. You're gonna make it a heck of a lot worse. Now, it's not a bad excuse, but it doesn't apply across the board. It's very complex. It's very, very complex when I can apply this. Right? It's not open and shut case. Definitely not open and shut case. Right? A lot of factors involved. Right? So a person will look at it and say, what do you mean? It says, I'm going to be the greatest Karaite in the world. Yeah? It says I have an obligation to rebuke. Okay. But what does the end of the verse say? The end of the verse says, if you don't know what you're doing, don't do it. Because you're going to bear the sin. So when does that apply? When exactly does that apply? So you give someone a little bit of information, they have a little bit of knowledge, so they think they know everything about nothing. Yeah? I'm telling you, it's extremely complex. It's not straightforward. Right? I'll give another example. Right? You're not allowed to put a stumbling block in front of someone. So let's say if a Jewish plumber, right, comes over to fix your sink or whatever, and he wants to drink of water. Now, if you give it to him, he's not going to make a blessing. When you're stumbling block, he's not going to make a blessing. If you ask him to make a blessing, maybe he will, maybe he won't, let's say. But how can you give him the drink? Can't give him the drink. What do you mean? It's covered in brios. Someone's going to say, what are you, stupid? Of course you have to give him a drink. Guy's working hard. Whatever he wants a drink, you can't give him a drink. But if you give him a drink, let's say you say, I'm only giving you a drink if you make a blessing. You can ask him to make a blessing. Could. Some people will do that. Give me Yarmulke here and make a blessing. I'll give you, not a problem. What if they say, I'm not making a blessing? I don't believe in God and this and that. Just give me a drink. Will that make you look bad? Makes you look pretty bad. It says Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, blessed memory, from the Torah giant to the last generation, according to everybody. And he says, in such a situation, you have to give to him. You have to give to him. Why? You put his stumbling block in front of him, Torah prohibition. Torah prohibition, very good. You put his stumbling block, okay. But if you don't give it to him, he's going to hate Jews more. He's going to hate Orthodox Jews more. So you have to give to him. Right? Absolutely you have to give it to him. But, of course, there's always a but. And the but is better not to give it to him direct. If you could, you can put it down in front of them and they take it themselves, not a problem. Right? That is the best way to do it. Now, it doesn't always work out that way, but, let's say, a person has non-Jewish religious, non-Jewish family over. You're eating. They say, pass this or whatever. If there's no other way around it, you can give it to them. It's better not to give it to them direct. Why? Because you're handing them the food. They can get the food from someone else. Someone else could have passed it. Okay, so what? What do I care? Someone else could have passed it. The fact is, you are in direct line to give them it. See, that's Torah prohibition. You're putting a stumbling block because they're not going to make a blessing. Right? In case they're not going to make a blessing. Right? Or you try and get them to make a blessing, you make it worse. You make it a lot worse. And then you get the problem, let's say they make the blessing, but they don't care. They'll just say the words, but it doesn't mean anything to them. Right? So what did you gain? What did you gain? You make a blessing, you got to know where the blessing's going. When you say God's name, Hashem Elokeinu, you have to know where the blessing's going. Right? And if you get the blessing wrong, in your mind, you were thinking it was one thing and it was something else, and you said God's name, and then you said the right thing in the end, good. It's not the way to do it, but you fulfill your obligation. You didn't do it in the optimal way. Kaufman would say you got to C-, right? You fulfill the obligation, but you take a non-religious Jew. Yeah? They say God's name. They have intention for God. They have intention that he runs the world. I'm talking about simple explanation, no Kabbalah here. Simple explanation. They say, Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech olam. Right? Anyone can say that. It's very easy to say. Right? Even though they have to say Baruch. right? It's kind of hard. You have to like German CH, you got to like spit at people, right? Say Baruch Atah, right? Very good. Right? Very good. So you're saying God's source of all blessing, God's king of the world. Stop. Whatever that next blessing is going to be, whether it's Brei Eitz over a tree or Sha'akol, Li'eh Bidvarot over water or whatever drink, except wine and grape juice, whatever it is. You think that secular Jew for 1 second thinking about that? I don't think they're thinking about it. And most of them don't even know what it means. Even if they would make the blessing. The only way they would know is if they look at the translation, right, at what it says. And again, as long as they know what it says and who they're saying it to, but, in that case, they make a blessing. It's a good question, very good question, whether you're allowed to answer on me. You're going to say you offend someone if you don't. True, right? Maybe you offend them. Okay. If they don't know the difference, good. Yeah, the issue is if you answer Amen, where's that blessing going? See, people don't think about this. These are things people don't think about. And it's understandable why. Yeah, but, saying God's name, we don't take God's name in vain, right? I spoke about this last week. My Q&A, someone asked me about that. About taking God's name in vain. It's a pretty serious thing that should apply to non-Jews also. We don't just go around saying God's name all the time. And if I made a mistake in a blessing, but my statement is true, I don't go back and fix it. If my statement is true, very good. Then my statement is true. Okay. I made the wrong blessing, but my statement is true. Good. I fulfill my obligation. If the statement isn't true, different issue. Then I have to go back. And make a new blessing. Because what did I do? I made a statement that wasn't true. Not only that, I used God's name to do it. The secular Jew in general, right? We'll pick on them for a minute. Secular Jew in general. Yeah, doesn't know nothing about nothing. Most important question they ever ask is, do I put ketchup or mustard or relish on my hot dog? Okay. They're holding nowhere in the world. They make a blessing. Now, you stop them after they make the blessing, after they eat. Let's say they make a blessing. Then what'd you just say? And they read the translation, right? You give a translation. This is what you said. Yeah. God, the source of all blessing, king of the world. Now, we hold you need to say both. You need to mention God's name, right? Hashem Elokeinu, and you need to mention he's king of the world, divine providence. You need to mention both. If you mention one without the other, it's not even a blessing in vain. It's nothing. Mention God's name, it's a problem, but it's not a blessing in vain. So blessing here. You have to acknowledge who God is. You have to acknowledge he's in charge of the world. And he runs everything. Without doing either one, it's not a blessing at all. So now again, you ask a secular Jew, they just made that blessing. You translate it for them, or they have a translation. Very good, either way. They have a good translation, Art Scroll translation, best translation, very good. Yeah, now you ask them what that means. What did they mean when they said it? My guess, without knowing anything, but I think I'm right, my guess is they didn't have intention for the right thing. They won't have intention for the right thing. They'll say Hashem Elokeinu, right? Maybe they'll get it. They'll say that's God. Okay. And they'll say, okay, king of the world. Now you ask them. Don't do this. But if you were to ask them, do you really believe that? Do you really believe that God knows the thoughts of man? Yeah, one of the 13 principles of Maimonides, of the Rambam. Do you really believe God's in charge? That God runs the world? There's divine providence in everything that we do. Do you believe that or not? How many people are going to say of these people? How many people of these people are going to say that was their intention? Goose egg. That's my guess. Yeah, I'm very pessimistic here. Goose egg. They're not going to know. 100% they're not going to know. Even if they would know, right? I'll take it the other side. I'll be generous here. Yeah, even if they would know the other side, and they knew what it means, let's say, which they don't, but let's say they would actually know. Yeah, what does that do? What does that do? They really believe it? You can ask Orthodox Jews that question. That's a good question for them also. Did you have intention for that? And every time you say God's name, you have to have intention. God's past, present, future. God runs the world. Not just you stuff something in your face to eat because you're hungry or thirsty or whatever. You got to stop for a second. Think about what you're doing. So we won't pick on Orthodox Jews here. Right? We have enough problems. We have enough issues. This is an issue. This is a serious issue. So, they make I'll take it one step further. Yeah, call someone like that up to the Torah. They desecrate Shabbos. Big problem. In general, call them up to the Torah. Yeah, what do? They make the blessing called up to the Torah. Asher bachar banu mikol amim. The God chose us amongst the nations. Now, stop right there. I'd love to do this. It's kind of like being on a game show. Yeah. They make that blessing. They say God's name. He's king of the world. They say, Asher b'chal banu mikol amim. All right, stop. I'd love to do this. It's a great game show thing. All right, stop right there. What do you mean stop? Everyone's in there watching. What do you mean stop? They're in the middle of a blessing. Okay, forget about them in the middle of the blessing. You just said, Asher b'chal banu mikol amim. That you are chosen amongst the nations. And as Torah, and God gave us the Torah. Do you really believe that? Do you really believe we're chosen amongst the nation, or you think that it's just, we're superior to everybody else? Right? Do you really think? I'll make it even better. Take a Jew that's married to a non-Jew. Even worse. They get called up to the Torah, right? Let's say it's a guy. Yeah? He's married to a non-Jew. Okay. He gets called up to the Torah. He says, Asher b'chal banu mikol amim. Yeah? If I was there, I'd say, get him out of here. Throw him out. Can't make that blessing. It's a blessing in vain. 100% is a blessing in vain. Because he just said, Asher b'chal banu mikol amim. He just said, we're chosen amongst the Jewish people. Very good. How are you chosen amongst the Jewish people if you're married to a non-Jew? Ooh. Right? So I do an experiment. Take somebody, say no one's in synagogue. Right? I mentioned this before, but I still hold it to be true. Take someone and say, I want to take the synagogue. So what? Just, come. We go into the sanctuary. There's nobody there. Right? Pitch black. Good. Turn on the lights. Very good. So you tell them, okay, open the ark. They're like, why are we opening the ark? There's nobody here. I'm not going to read the Torah. Just open the ark. Okay. They open the ark. Very good. It's okay. Take out the Torah. Well, there's nobody here. Just take out the Torah. Okay. Take out the Torah. Very good. Said, okay, let's bring it up to the bima. Let's bring it up to the lectern over here. Bring it up. We're gonna put down. It's like you're absolutely out of your mind. You're right. I'm out of my mind. Good. Open it up. Open it up. Yeah. So let's take off the covering. Right. We're gonna open it up. So I said, okay, now I have a great idea. Now this is pivotal. I said, okay, this makes no sense. Why are we doing this? I said, okay, now we're gonna take the Torah. I'm going to give you the Torah scroll, right? I'm going to wrap it up, right? We're going to cover it back up. Very good. Now I'm going to give you back the Torah scroll. They're like, come on. You take it, you open it, you cover it, you give it back to me. What in the world is going on? I said, okay, you ready? They said, ready for what? I said, I want you to take the Sefer Torah now. I want you to take the Torah scroll, and I want you to throw it on the ground. I want you to stamp on it. I want you to dance on it. They're like, you're a fruitcake. I said, of course. Right? Called it a lot worse. I said, you're right, I'm a fruitcake. Why would I do that? Oh, why would you do that? I would never, desecrate a Torah scroll. That's desecrating a Torah scroll. Oh, put on my big bow tie. All right, attention. Who's married to a non-Jew? Oh, that's not desecrating a Torah scroll. No, that's Webster's fifth definition. You don't get it. I meant for that generation or future generations. It wasn't talking about my generation. It was written by men. Oh, even better. If it's written by men, why'd they say it? Why'd they say it a dozen times across the board? Don't marry non-Jew. Or do you think they were kidding? Webster's eighth definition? Yeah. There's a spark of a Jew in every Jew. Even a non-Jew wants to convert, there's a spark there also. Well, think about it. Someone went to the camps. Was in the camps in during World War II. A secular Jew. And what do they want? What the Germans do to this poor person? They wanted this person to defecate on the Torah scroll. They had whatever. Parts of the Torah scroll. I don't know if they had a whole Torah scroll, whatever it was. They said, if you don't do it, Jew, if you don't do it, we're going to kill you. Here's a secular Jew. Secular Jew knows nothing from nothing, right? Let's say. Probably ate on Yom Kippur, right? So if intermarried, not intermarried, don't matter, right? This secular Jew says, no. Says, listen, if you don't do this, I'm going to kill you. I'm going to take this gun and shoot you right in the head. He says, you can shoot me right in the head. He said, it doesn't matter. He says, I'm not going to do that. And they killed him. He died sanctifying God's name. Yeah. How could a Jew do that? Eats on Yom Kippur. Doesn't keep any of the holidays. Yeah. Desecrates Shabbos. Marries non-Jews. Does whatever. Because the spark of a Jew inside will say there's a limit. There's a limit to what I do. Come on, you're a walking contradiction. You're a walking contradiction. What's the problem? Right? What is the problem? The problem is, we just said in Pirkei Avos, right? I went through last night. 3 things take a person out of this world. One of them is the evil inclination. One of them is the evil eye. Second thing is the evil inclination. The evil inclination. So even though a person really probably knows they have that spark inside of them, and what's the right thing to do, what's the wrong thing to do, but the evil inclination, their agenda, whatever they're surrounded by, convinces them otherwise. But deep down, a Jew's a Jew. Yeah, he has that spark. So no matter how secular a Jew, can't even imagine this, no matter how secular a Jew may be, they are not going to take a Torah scroll and throw it on the ground. I know I have a relative once, a prayer book fell on the floor. It was probably chopped up and, a lot of the prayers missing there. Okay. And, he picked it up and kissed it. He said, yeah, that's what we do, right? And I said, yeah. Yeah. Someone who's a Reformed Jew, why would they do that? Even if it's written in English, why would they do that? Because they say it's holy. It's a holy book. Fell on the floor, you got to kiss it. You got to show respect. Nothing else they show respect for. But certain things they do. Certain things they do. Because the pinto of Yid, the spark of a Yid says, no, this is wrong. This can't be done. This is going too far. What about other things? So that's an agenda issue. Right? That they get caught up in desire and different things and what people say, what society around them does. Yes. But there are certain things even a secular Jew wouldn't do. Now, I would say in a pessimistic way, maybe you would have secular Jews even do that. Maybe they would even throw a Torah scroll on the ground. Yeah, I don't think so. Yeah, even to save their lives. If someone put a gun to their head and say, throw this Torah scroll on the ground, or I'm going to blow your brains up. Is someone going to do it to save their lives? I don't think too many would. Maybe some would save their lives, maybe. Maybe, but I don't think it's a very high percentage. But you have to ask the question, why? Said, I'd be willing to die for Torah, but you don't even know what it is. You have no idea what it stands for. Said, yeah, but I would give up my life. So that's sad. That means you would give up your life for nothing, not knowing why. Now, you might die sanctifying God's name. Okay, maybe. See, in this generation, I heard from a number of great rabbis that said, this generation, we're not going to have that choice. We're not going to be given that choice. They're not going to say, do this or die. They're just saying, die. We're going to kill you, and that's it. Why aren't you going to be given a choice? Why do these great rabbis say you're not going to be given a choice? Because this is a very, very weak generation. This is the cream puff generation. Right? Something like that, God's going to say, okay, I'm not going to test it with that. That's too hard of a test for this generation. Back in time, the Inquisition and all that, kiss the cross or die. A lot of people died. There were Moranos. They were secret Jews. Okay. Right? Anusim, right? Better call them Anusim. Right? They were forced. They were forced, so they didn't want to die. Okay. One of the things you got to give up your life for, anytime, any place. Right? One of them is idolatry. We got idolatry, murder, and immorality. But there are people who didn't give up their lives, but they lived their lives as secret Jews. they transgress the Torah prohibition of sanctifying God's name. Okay, right? I'm not here to judge, right? But there were, people like that. Fine. But in this cream puff generation, God's not going to bring that test. Why? So the great rabbi said, very simple, because the choice would be too hard. Choice would be too hard. Now, a person might think, come on, why would that be? Why in the world would that be? Because we see what people are willing to do. Yeah, it is interesting. That's what happened on October 7th. You have, some of these secular Jews coming out of the woodwork saying, they're proud, so proud to be Jewish. Question is, did they do anything Jewish over the year? There were some people, got into religion more. There is what to be said for them. You certainly had, soldiers that, they were making census for them because they understand there's no atheist in the foxhole, right? You're up against the enemy. You don't know if you're coming back. You want divine protection. Everybody wants divine protection, right? You can argue afterwards. Nah, it's really should be like this or like that. Bottom line, you're going into a lion's den. You don't know if you're coming back. You want divine protection. Whether it works, whether it doesn't work. I had someone once tell me, he said, pray for this person. You should pray for this person there. They're very sick. And I'm always dying when I hear that from a secular Jew, no matter how old they are, usually people much older. I'm dying to say, I've never said it, but I'm dying to say, what do you care? You think prayer really helps? They then start a whole argument, which no mitzvah to do, right? But deep down, there's no atheist in the foxhole. When a person gets that bad diagnosis, they know there's nowhere else to turn. They go to prayer. They go back to the roots. I'm not saying they become ultra religious per se, but they know deep down that's the spark. That's the spark every Jew has. Now, every non-Jew that wants to convert, they also have that spark. That spark was at Mount Sinai. Very good. They heard the Torah be given at Mount Sinai because otherwise, logically speaking, makes no sense. Makes no sense why a non-Jew would want to convert. People say they come out of Christianity. Most people I deal with, right? They've come out of Christianity. They thought it's a farce. They went back to the base, which is Judaism, whatever. Very good. But 80% of the Torah doesn't make sense. They had to have had that spark somewhere. Otherwise, imagine the holiday of Sukkot by Hallel, and they say those Thanksgiving Psalms, and everyone's shaking their lulav, and they're shaking it like this, and they're shaking it like this, and they're shaking it backwards. They're going to say, wow, I got these palm fronds, I got my lemon on steroids, I got my esrog, I got my willows, I got my myrtle leaves, beautiful, and you're shaking it like this, and you're shaking it like that. People are going to look and say, makes no sense. Doesn't make any sense. Like, what in the world is going on? What planet did I just drop in? Right? So I grew up with it, not necessarily knowing what it is. But someone coming from the outside makes no sense. Makes no sense except for the fact you have to say it doesn't matter intelligence. And people look into things, they see Christianity isn't true or paganism isn't true, whatever it may be. Okay, very good. Yeah, very good. What's the point? Right? What's the point over here? Point is, it's not logical. Totally not logical. You have to say, you have no choice. You have to say they had the spark that they saw the Torah given to Mount Sinai, that their soul was at Mount Sinai. Otherwise, for a non-Jew to want to do this, hard enough for a Jew to come back. A Jew could be steeped in garbage, like you need to snorkel to breathe, right? A Jew could be so steeped in stuff, who knows what. I can understand it. There's a possibility they could come back. Why? Because they have that inside of them. If a non-Jew wouldn't have it inside of them, it would make no sense. No sense whatsoever. Yeah, a bunch of questions here. Let me deal with them. One question is, can Noahide marry a non-Noahide? A flower of a false religion? Yes. Now, can they, let's say they get married. Can they be part of a idolatrous ceremony? Right? That question comes up also. And the answer is no. So they can't be part of an idolatrous ceremony. But really, they could be married to a non-Jew that's a pagan, right? Or a Buddhist or a Christian. Now, it's not their fault. First, they can try and convince them, whatever, but let's say they're Bible thumpers or whatever, they're not going to give that up. Decide to marry them anyway. It's going to be a good question. How are you going to raise kids? Right? Be a very big question. How that's going to be and how everything else is going to work. Let's say you're able to work things out. Let's say there's mutual respect. We can agree to disagree. Okay. Is it forbidden? It's not forbidden. You got to remember, there's no mitzvah for a Jew, all the more so for a non-Jew, to draw a non-Jew closer to their mitzvahs. But you're going to say, if we're the light into nations, I have someone dogging me all the time saying, you're the light into nations, you have an obligation. Who says? Right? These are universal laws. These are things you don't need to have a very high IQ to realize, I have to keep them. Right? I mean, okay, you want to believe the narrative about Christianity, which makes absolutely no sense, right? Or any of these other so-called religions, okay. You can be brainwashed also. But logically speaking, makes sense. Don't kill, makes sense. Immorality makes sense. Law courts make sense. These are laws that make sense. Non-Jews are not going to get upstairs after they die after 120 years. And God's going to say, hey, why don't you keep my logical laws? No, I didn't know. What do you mean you didn't know? What do you mean you didn't know you're not allowed to steal? Well, Uncle Sam is different, takes too much money anyway. That's not stealing. Or, you're not allowed to murder. Grandpa John was going to die anyway, and he was suffering. We want to take him out of his own misery and our misery. So that's euthanasia. Oh, that's not murder. That's mercy. Non-Jews never going to get accused of that because these things are obvious. You got, tens of thousands of, of Hindus and, others worshiping cows. Okay. They're all going to get wiped out, right? Unfortunately, unless they see the light. But who says? Who says they should do it? I get contacted by a lot of people. India, other places, they come out of it. They can come out of it. It's not impossible. Definitely not impossible. But you get tens of thousands of people get stuck in it. Okay. It's their choice. Right? It's definitely their choice. But the question was, they had Noahide married and Noahide eat a flower of false religion. You could. You can't do an idolatrous ceremony. I would definitely say that. Right? It's forbidden to do an idolatrous ceremony. I had someone ask me all kinds of different people they could marry. What if they do this? What if they do that? Like almost every scenario which is both forbidden. Because idolatry. I said you're going to find someone who's not idolatrous. Or, if they are idolatrous, you don't have an idolatrous ceremony. And you work it out afterwards. But that's that type of ceremony would be forbidden. There's no status for Ger Toshav, right? Now does that mean there's no status for Noahide? No, I said that. I made that very clear. There's a technical issue why there's no Ger Toshav today. Okay. But who said you can't be a Noahide? Non-Jew doesn't want to convert or can't convert. Right? There's definitely a status. My whole point was that they don't have to go to Beis Din to clear themselves. Right? But there is a status of Noahide today. I don't think there's any question. Right? I don't think there's any question. The Rambam writes, only only way except the Ger Toshav falls 7 hours. It's not just that. You have to have a majority of Jews in the land of Israel. You don't have that. I mean, now you have it. Right? Now you have it. Now you have actually the first time in I don't even know since when, right? But you have more Jews now in Israel than any other place, right? Than any other place. That is true, right? So that you should knock off that. But in either case, right? It's a technical issue. But right now, if a non-Jew is not willing to accept all 613 commandments, he doesn't have to. If he's a Noahide, he only has to accept whatever the Noahide laws are. I mean, there's 7, which is an umbrella. They're probably about 50 or 60 altogether. But they have to accept the Noahide covenant. They have to accept these laws that were codified at Mount Sinai by Moses. They don't have to consider they don't have to keep all 613. They have to believe the Rambam says. They have to believe, which is true. They have to believe that God gave all 613 commandments. And he passed it down to Moses, passed it down to us. See, a lot of people don't realize that either. Right? They'll say, well, yeah, go in front of a base and accept the Noahide laws. But you have to accept the Noahide laws according to the Rambam. It's gonna wipe out most Noahites, and for that. And that is, they have to accept it came from Moses, that it was passed down from Adam, to Noah. Noah passed it down to Avram, Avram passed it down to everyone else. It got codified at Mount Sinai. Very good. But if a non-Jew does not believe that these laws were codified at Mount Sinai, not a Noahide. They lose their status of a Noahide, right? How many non-Jews actually know that? Not too many. I guarantee not too many. But that's crucial, right? That is crucial. Yeah, there are other questions here. 1 second. Someone here mentions someone here mentions when it comes to following 1 second, that's later. They reject Torah because it was written by man, right? Every book they do acknowledge was written by men, right? Sorry. Yeah, it's it is God's irony that things that they'll accept that people accept because they see it, in a newspaper article, or they see it, on YouTube or whatever. Newspaper is a better example. They'll accept it as fact. I don't know, kind of problematic. Yeah, we're the fact checkers. We're the fact checkers. Yeah, the problem is you got the same lies being spewed all over the place, and people just believe it after a while. If you keep hearing the same thing over and over again, you tend to believe that it's probably true, right? Because it's the same lie. Someone asks, comes the following laws of Torah dealing with secular Jews or non-Jews. How do we not embarrass them or make them blush? No, that's a problem. We're talking about if you're rebuking them, right? If they don't follow, there's an obligation to rebuke them. Now, some would say, and you have to know what context this is because it's extremely complex, and that is, some will say, well, you have an obligation to rebuke them no matter what, even if they're not going to listen. So Gemara says that how far does rebuke go when someone's about to slap you? That's how far it goes. But people will say, we don't know how to rebuke today, so you shouldn't do it. So we have an obligation to follow Torah, right? And we're going to come across secular Jews in our life, just inevitable, right? That's going to be true, or non-Jews. Do we not embarrass them? So let me ask like this. I'll say, what if they get embarrassed, but it's their own fault? Their own fault, right? I'll give an example. I was at a mourner's house many years ago. I have somebody there, a secular Jewess, right? A non-Jewish woman, much, much older than me, went to give me a hug, and I took 2 steps back, right? Normally, it's kind of hard to do, right? But the best case scenario is person can break the ice and say, I only hug, ugly women, or you take a bow, you hold your hands behind your back, so to speak, or you just say, sorry, I'm not a shaker, or I'm not a hugger, or, whatever. Now, in this case, yeah, there's only damage control. Person got embarrassed, right? Person got embarrassed. Now, some hold even hugging somebody, who's so old, they're like a prune, right? They're, doesn't matter, 70s, 80s, whatever. They can be wrinkled up and shriveled up like a prune, doesn't matter. According to some, you have to give up your life rather than do it. Right? That's how severe it is. Now, if someone, let's say it's awkward. Yeah, it can be awkward. Let's say it's awkward, the person got embarrassed. You never intention to get them embarrassed. But they got embarrassed because, they should have known better. They should have. But they didn't. Okay, or they didn't think of it, or whatever. So I heard someone say under their breath. So if you're going to say something under their breath, right, I'll give free advice. Make sure no one hears it. That's why it's under your breath, right? So someone says under the breath, because I could definitely hear it. Someone's, oh, come on, she's so old, this, that. Like, how can you do such a thing? Because that's what the Torah says. Because that's what the Torah demands. Okay, you can make light of it, this, that, but again, you're not allowed to, period. Even if it's a fish handshake, even just a little, love bump, whatever, don't matter. Love hug, sorry, whatever, doesn't matter, right? Doesn't matter. It's forbidden. Should be forbidden, right? The other person's gonna embarrass. It's not your fault. It's awkward. Yes, I might be in a situation soon that it might be very awkward. Okay, so to make clear ahead of time, right? This person, namely me, does not shake hands with other women. Yeah, that'll take care of the problem. They might ask why. What's what's the sources behind it? Why would you do it? Okay, but you got to do straight away. You got people should know, and if they don't know, you try. Okay, I said I think the best way to do it is put your hands behind your back and you bow, like you acknowledge them. You don't want to not acknowledge them. Definitely don't want to not acknowledge them. You have to acknowledge them. It's awkward. It's awkward, but at the end of the day, you're not allowed to. You're not allowed to. What about the sake of peace? What about the sake of peace? They get embarrassed. Okay, they get embarrassed. That's not your fault. That's not something, you embarrassed. We're talking about embarrassed them when you use your portion of the world to come. You did it on purpose. It's not by purpose. Someone got embarrassed, right? Someone's got to say they got embarrassed. Okay. They got embarrassed. Right? They get embarrassed. What are you supposed to do? And it came through you. Okay. You should have thought of a better way. You should have, it could be you're held somewhat accountable. Well, certain things, you got to make clear at the outset. Sometimes you can't. What if you're on let's say, a subway, right? You're on a train totally packed. You brush up against women, that's not a problem. I mean, it's not ideal, but it's not a problem. Why is it not a problem? Because it's not something intimate. You're just like, you're smushed like a sardine. If you want to do something, you couldn't, right? It's sardine syndrome. So that's not a problem. Right? Moshe Feinstein brings that down. Others, of blessed memory, others, say a similar thing. Okay. But a person's like, but it's not an intimate thing. It's not an intimate thing. So what? Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter if it's a fish handshake. Remember once told me a story about somebody. Very important rabbi he got knighted by the queen. Right, got knighted by the queen. With the presence of the queen, she sticks out her hand. Now she's wearing gloves. Yeah. So he felt, okay, fish handshake, right? Fish handshake like this. She's wearing gloves, not a problem. Because the fish handshake. He held it was okay. Right? Yeah. Right? He slaughtered him. Said you can't do it. No matter. Totally forbidden. It's the queen. Okay. They're going to explain to Queenie that you can't do that. That's forbidden. But everybody does. Okay, so don't knight me. There are things you can't do. There are things you can't do. And there are things you just can't get around. So what do you do when you can't get around it? So Kaufman would say, what do you call it? Damage control. That's all you can do. There's not much. There's not much you can do over here. Right? The only question of like how much you're gonna get made fun of or yelled at, but okay. Rather be, made fun of or yelled at in this world than in the next. Better look stupid in other people's eyes than in God's eyes. Right? But this is a serious thing. We're not, it's not making light of it a little bit, but it's an extremely serious thing. It doesn't matter if it's not intimate or not. It doesn't matter if the person's dried up, shriveled prune. It's irrelevant, right? It's irrelevant. I had a case where, my wife wasn't there, and there was another woman, they were staying by me. So when actually this is during the winter. So when there was no one else around, I leave the door open in case anyone could walk in. The problem being alone. What we call yichud, right? That was forbidden. And sleeping at night, so I had like 2 teenage kids come over and sleep over. They found out later. I mean, a number of years later, why? They're like, "Come on, really?" I was like, "That's the law. Can't be a law." And people think like, And the rabbis didn't know what they're talking about. They knew very well, right? They knew very well, exactly what they were talking about. And there's no compromise, because once you compromise and do things, what's going to happen? You're going to get burnt. Not saying literally, but you will get burnt, 100%, right? And it's not going to end well. And the person will think it's so far-fetched. So far-fetched, right? I told the story about, somebody studied by Rav Shach in Panovich, right? One of the top yeshivas in Israel. And whatever, he's having difficulty with Parnasa, with livelihood. And he found a job, was able to learn during the day, he found a job at night. And there was a woman that came and cleaned. There was a problem in Yichud. So, but he needed the money. So he wanted Rav Shach to find some permissibility. So Shach took out the Shulchan Aruch, took out the code of Jewish law, and said, state's clear. It's forbidden. He said, yeah, but what am I going to have connection to this woman? She's cleaning, she's cleaning the office, this, that. I'm not going to have any connection. And Rav Shach got angry. And Rav Shach said, you think you know better than the Torah? You think you know better than the rabbis? Right? That's it. It's a low plug. You don't argue. You do not argue. That is what the Torah says. That's what it says. So that's what you got to do. So what happened? You can imagine what happened. They got to talking, this and that, divorced his wife, married this woman, and the rest is history. So you say, but come on, don't have any connection to this person, coming from two different worlds, blah, 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 blah. Rav Shach said, mess. True story. I told the story before, much longer detail, but you don't mess. When you think you know better than Torah, and you think you can reinvent the wheel, think again. The rabbis weren't stupid. They understood the psyche of man. They understood the desires of man. They understood. They clearly understood. So we think we know better. Come on, the Rambam was medieval. These other people live in a different generation. Blah blah blah. These things don't apply. They apply much more today than they ever did. So we think we're more intelligent. We got a lot more knowledge. We think, who knows what, people think what these old, stuffy, rabbis would say and what they would do and blah, blah, blah. So what? Yeah. Because Rav Shach said, you don't mess. The Torah says what it says, that's it. You think you know better, you'll get burnt. And this guy got burnt. This guy totally got burnt. Oh, come on, what's ever going to happen? What's my connection to this person? Two different lives, two different, ways of life, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, what happens? We know what happened. We know exactly what happened. So, you don't say never, right? You never say never. So the question is, okay, with secular Jews and non-Jews, we don't want to embarrass them, right? You don't want to embarrass them. You do whatever you can not to embarrass them. But if they get embarrassed, their own fault. Essentially, it's their own fault. You got to try and not embarrass them. Like I said, you can make light of it. You can make fun of it. Whatever, to break the ice. They can still think you're a wacko. Okay. They can think what they want. That's fine. Right. But in general, they'll have more respect for you later. They still might think you're a wacko. Doesn't matter. But, in the workplace, yeah, it's hard. In other venues, it's hard. That is true. But if they get embarrassed in the process, that's not necessarily your fault. You try to do whatever you can not to embarrass them. Sometimes you can't. Sometimes you have no choice. What is your intention? Wasn't my intention that that this person was going to get. I didn't. They're just embarrassed. Okay. Well, I'm not saying getting bent out of shape. They understood afterwards, but a little bit of tension there. But whatever, moved on. Moved on. They know they'll never do that again. Okay. I mean, had someone go so far, they're like, if I would see you and you wouldn't give me a hug, obviously a woman, and you wouldn't give me a hug, don't even bother. Don't even bother calling me. Don't even bother coming to see me. Whatever. I made a joke about it. They didn't think it was funny. They didn't think it was funny. Okay, what can I do? You know, they just said this is the stupidest thing I ever heard. They made fun of it, whatever. And I understand it. Like, how could you see me and not give me a hug? How can you just I understand they care, they want a hug, very good. They want to show how much they care, very good. Okay, gotta show it another way. Someone else also hammered me. So I said, give my wife a hug. Give my wife a big hug from me. All right, okay, so they think you're welcome. What are you gonna do? There's no way out of the situation. Nothing to do. So again, I can understand someone to be uptight, and someone would say, it's really meaningful for me. I can't believe you can't do it. Again, it's coming not from a bad source. It's not coming necessarily from a bad source. They just want to show affection. Okay. But you can't. Right? There's no way to do it. There's no way to do it. So what happens? Sometimes the person gets offended. And then a person will say, like this person said, if don't even bother coming to visit if you're in the vicinity, whatever. Don't even bother come visit because you won't give me a hug. Don't bother. Okay. Kind of extreme. Kind of not showing, any respect for you. But again, what's really behind it? What are they really saying? They say, I just want to give you a hug. Like, what's the big deal? I just want to give you a hug. Okay. But it's forbidden. Villagers aren't even supposed to shake a woman's hand, right? Even in a fish handshake, right? Even in a whoops handshake, I would say, from Boston, right? You shake like this. It means nothing, right? It's not an intimate thing, but shaking hands is also a problem. Forget even a body bump or whatever, I don't know. Whatever, even just, a tiny hug. We're not grabbing you to grab you, come on. That's not the intention. But yeah, even shaking a woman's hand. That, as many great commentators would say, you got to give up your life for it. Can't do it. Right? But that's showing, that's showing respect. That's showing respect. You save it for the people that are permissible. That's it. Someone here says this entire rabbit hole of information relates to this topic. It's find answers all you find. Okay. Right? Not gonna find an answer you like. Right? You won't. Right? You definitely won't. So it says written by a man, was written by God. Yeah. All right, 1 second. So it says that resonate in the collective conscience. Okay. Again, if you believe the Torah was written by God, right, then you have to understand God knew what he was doing. Where people have a problem is the fact that they say man messed it up. They want to hold according to quote unquote the written law. And what's the written law? Is what the Karaites say, just like by the written law, not by oral law. Then we've changed it and whatever. But at the end of the day, most things the rabbi is going to tell you to do or not to do are based on the Torah. Not just making it up on their own. Right? Maybe some things, maybe some things they did. Okay. That doesn't necessarily have a source. Okay. But we're relying on this. As we said before in the book of Deuteronomy, right? It makes clear you got to listen to the Kohen and Levite in every generation. The Kohen and Levite are, who are they today? The rabbis. You got to listen to them. Right? They understood. People make a travesty of a mockery of Hashem out of it. I would agree. Right? I would agree. There's an idea that people want explanations. Makes sense. People want to know why. Okay. Sometimes the answer is because God said so. That's it. We don't have any other answer. Right? Not even a bad answer. Like, this is it. Because a lot of things do not make sense logically. I had someone tell me, about shatnez. About mixing wool and linen together. Very good. So I said, I thanked them for sweaters I gave my kids. Said 100% wool. I said, it's probably not a problem, but I'll have to get them checked. They asked me why. And I told them, and they said, what's the reason? I said, I'm not sure. It's like a law we don't understand, like, mixing milk and meat and other things. But So they said, but if you can't give me a reason, why would I do it? So what my quick answer was? I said, if I did, I said, what if I gave you a reason? Would you keep it? It depends. Depends if it resonates with me. I said, I gave you 10 reasons. You can find a problem with this reason, a problem with that, problem with something else, right? That's what you can do. Be very, doesn't fit my world outlook. Okay, what about this? Nah, I don't like that. Nah. So a person can say, they can say, well, what if I find a better reason? No. Either you believe it's true or it's not true. We try to give reasons why we do things, and not everything has a clear-cut reason. Yeah. That's what a lot of the Rambam's Guide for the Perplexed is all about. Try to give reasons to things we do. Very good. Yeah, but there are a lot of things we don't understand. That are not clear. We do it anyway. We got to learn, why we do it. But some things are an absolute hoax. It's a law we don't. It's a law we don't understand. If you take kosher meat and kosher cheese, I can eat them separately, but I can't put them together. Why? Some people say they did it for idolatry, they did it for other things. Okay, yeah, but in general, it doesn't make sense. It makes logical sense. Taking away the mother bird, right? You take away the mother bird, you shoot away the mother bird, you take the eggs, get long life. It's only one other mitzvah mentions about getting long life. What's that mitzvah? Kibbut avim, honoring parents. Right? It says in Exodus chapter 20. That's it. So what other mitzvah besides honoring parents? And that is shooing away the mother bird. You're going to say, but it's cruel. Shooing away the mother bird, take the egg. That's heresy. That the Gemara states clear is heresy. Still got to do it. If it happens, right? If you see mother bird hovering over the eggs, at a certain point, shoot away the mother bird to take the eggs. Yeah, but you get long life. You get long life. Not in this world, right? Most likely in the next world. But if a person says, well, that's cruel, that's a problem. Right? That's about not understanding what's going on. Yeah. But Torah's not cruel. Torah says what we have to do. Or we have, you have to understand why we're supposed to do that when it happens. Yeah. Someone asks, let's see. Talking sources, that's some of the precepts that I've heard some rabbis discuss. Something is allowed to run the world to a certain extent through his minions. But anyway, that's what I explained before. I have no idea. That doesn't make any sense to me, only because he can only do certain things. He doesn't have power to try and make people sin. But obviously can't do whatever he wants. And even if he's got other spiritual forces to help him, whatever, you want to call them his minions or whatever, maybe, but God's ultimately in control, right? He doesn't have full reign to do whatever he wants, right? And he has to announce his plans before he acts. I don't know. God knows what his plans are, so I don't know if he has to announce them. But he doesn't have free reign. He doesn't have free reign just to do whatever he wants. We see that from the book of Job. God says you can test him, but you can't kill him. So you see, he's limited on what he can do. He can't take life where God doesn't want him to. Right? In other words, if he takes someone's life, it's because God said to do it. God said that's your job, that's what you got to do. Okay. Right? But he can use anything at his disposal. That is true. That I wouldn't disagree. He is definitely allowed to use anything at his disposal to try and get people to sin. That's his job. So if he's got other sources, not just himself to do it, sure. He's a busy guy. Or busy being, whatever. Or you got other people, yeah. It's not necessarily, a contradiction, but bottom line is regardless whether he announces it, he doesn't announce it, doesn't really matter, right? But the point is he's bound by what God tells him to do, right? Since there's no such thing as a fallen angel, he has to abide by it, right? He's got no choice, he's got no free will, right? He's got no free will. So since he's got no free will, he has to do what God says. But he can try and make anyone sin in so many different ways. And not just him, through other people, through other, through other spiritual forces, whatever. Right? He can have other people help him along the way. That's true. Right? I don't think that's not true. Right? That very well may be true, but he's limited. Right? That's the important thing. He is 100% limited. He can't just do what he wants. right? He cannot do what he wants. If it's just testing a person, it's one thing. If God said you can't kill him, you can't kill him. Now, where would that be sourced? Probably in Kabbalah. I would assume, if it would be true, that it would be sourced in Kabbalah. But we say that by God also. There are a lot of messengers God has. So he can choose them to do whatever he wants. He's got a lot of angels to do his work. He came to, 3 angels came to visit Abraham, dressed up as Arabs, one to heal Abraham, one to tell Sarah she's going to have a child, and the other to overthrow Sodom. So what do you see from there? Angels do not multitask. In other words, once they're given a task to do, that's what they have to do. That's their obligation. They can't go outside what they're tasked to do, right? And then once they're done, what does God do? He uses them for something else. That's what he does. He's got the ability to use them for whatever he wants, right? But they just don't do what they want. So if God has a lot of messengers he can use to do whatever he wants in this world, then they have to abide by what he says. So why couldn't the Satan, Mr. S, the evil inclination, angel of death, whatever you want to call him, why does he not have the ability to use other sources, the other sources, to do what he wants them to do? There are high-level angels, lower-level angels. Right? He's, same way at the top. Right? Same way at the top. So can he designate other people, other angels or whatever, to do his bidding? Why not? Not a contradiction. I don't think it's a contradiction. He's not doing everything himself. He's got other, he's got other spiritual beings to do it. If God can do that and use these spiritual beings for whatever he wants, why couldn't he? And these spiritual beings, the same thing. They're messengers. It just designates power. It designates to this one, to that one. And again, but where's the ultimate power and the ultimate agreement coming from? It's coming from God himself. Right? That we can't forget. He's not just doing things on his own. Right? So the source, I would assume, should probably be, somewhere in Kabbalah. That's what I would that's what I would assume. It's in Derech Hashem, it's not there. Right? I don't think it's there when it speaks about spiritual forces. But it is clear. It is very clear. God has everything in front of him. That's one of the miracles that God took the Jews out of Egypt. As we say in the Haggadah, he did it himself. Well, why did he do it himself? Why did God do it himself? He got plenty of angels to do it. And but he wanted to show his power, wanted to show his might, wanted to show that he is God. Right? He also felt there's so much impurity. There's so much impurity. One opinion is there was so much impurity in Egypt. What did he do? He didn't want the angels to go there because they just could have affected them also, even though they're pure souls. Yeah, that's what I would say on that. Somebody asked, which rabbis am I referring to? Whatever. There are, there are rabbinic authorities on pretty clear that God has a lot of messengers. Use anyone he wants. But again, when it comes to these ideas are very much Kabbalistically inclined. Right? A lot of it's Kabbalah. So I would say, and it's not out of the realm of reality, that God himself has many messengers, so something can also use many angels. Why not? You got power to do that. He's probably got a lot of messengers also. But where's the main power coming from? Main power is coming from God himself. You can't make that mistake. They're not, Mr. S, for Christianity, it makes a lot of sense. Right? Christianity makes a lot of sense that evil comes from him. Right? All evil stems from him. Why do I say it makes sense? Because they want to look at God as being good. So if God is good, you can't have evil. That's why they mistranslate Isaiah chapter 45, verse 7. According to us, the proper translation is God created evil. This is a major problem for Christians. Major problem for Christians. Because where does evil come from according to them? It's the rest, right? Satan, the evil inclination, whatever you want to call him, the angel of death, right? So they have to mistranslate it. So if, people suffer and people have a hard time, so we have to say, we have to try and understand where it all comes from. Why righteous people suffer, why evil people, have it easy. Why is it so hard to reach potential, right? That I've been, speaking about quite a bit over the last number of weeks in, what do you call it, on BJQ Radio, on my podcast there. But probably speak tomorrow also about things that stop us potentially from reaching potential. But at the end of the day, we're going to realize one thing: these spiritual beings, as the Ramchal says, and again, that's very much steeped in Kabbalah, and that is that spiritual beings do not have free will, right? It's a major Jewish concept. It goes against Christianity and other things that they'll claim that, you get all the angels fighting against each other, this and that according to us cannot happen, right? Because according to the first principle of Maimonides, that God is absolute. God doesn't change. God has no needs, right? In general. So if God has no needs and he created, it says, beginning of Genesis chapter 1, verse 1, Bereshit bara Elokim es hashamayim ve'es haaretz, God created the heaven and the earth. That means he created everything in the heavens and the earth. So there's nothing he didn't create. So if he created something, how could something have free will outside of God? That wouldn't make sense logically, right? Absolutely makes no sense logically. So if God created the heavens and the earth, that means he has power over everything in the world, in this world, in the spiritual world, right? It's one of the reasons when we shake a lulav, on Sukkot, right? We shake it in front of us, to the side, we shake it behind, to the right or to the left, you shake it up and you shake it down. So you shake it in 4 directions, north, west, east, and south, right? That means God has dominion in this world. And you shake it up and down, showing he has dominion above and below, right? 6 directions. It means he's in charge. So if he's not in charge, these other things can do whatever they want. These other powers that he himself created, again, logically. Let's understand according to pure logic. If someone created something, if I'm sitting at this table, no one can see, but I'm sitting at a table, no one's going to think it made itself. So obviously the person who made it, made it is talent, or maybe it's on a factory, whatever it was, right? But if someone created something, that means they have power over what it created. That thing should not have power over them. Now, if God created everything, which we do understand, he created the heavens and the earth, how could something, again, logically, how could something that he created have power that God can't stop? There's been a fundamental question asked throughout the millennium. I don't really understand the question. And that is, could God make a rock so big you couldn't throw it? What's the answer? No. Right? I don't know what, people have been thinking about for the last 2,000 years, or more. Why? Because God's not limited. He's not limited by time or by space. Right? He's not limited. So if he's not limited, he can't make something he can't do. Right? It's illogical. 100% is illogical. Right? So therefore, if he's limited, then he doesn't have the power, let's say, God forbid, to punish or to reward or to do other things, right? If he's limited, then you have other powers that are being used somewhat against it. Now, this is kind of problematic because some people would say, wrongly, God created the world and disappeared. So he left all these different powers, the wind, and I don't know, oceans and all kinds of different forces. He left them to do whatever they want. And he sort of disappeared. Right? But that doesn't make any sense either, because Again, God's in control. There's nothing outside of him that has power that's not wielded from him in general. Someone asked me, my soul is not always super excited to live in a physical body. How do you improve this? Who wants to be here? I mean, it's a hard world to live in general. And there's a major conflict between body and soul, as we always say. If you go according to the body, you debase the body, debase the soul. If you go according to the soul, i.e., Torah, mitzvahs, spirituality, you uplift the body, and you elevate the body, you elevate the soul. So nobody wants to live in a physical world. The soul doesn't want to be in a physical world, but too bad, we're in a physical world, right? It's the only way to survive in a physical world is to do as many things that we can on a daily basis to be spiritual. That elevates the body, elevates the soul, right? But you live in a physical body, we're limited. You're right. We are limited, right? So the way to improve it is to tap into spirituality, right? That's the way. Just forget about anything else. Everything else doesn't matter. It's a hard thing to do because we live in the physical world, right? And we have physical desires and physical drives, right? And all kinds of things, but everything has to be harnessed in the right way. If you don't use spiritual things the right way and just go through the motions, it's very hard. So sometimes we have it easier, sometimes not. On a daily basis we struggle. And so the only way it's going to keep someone on the straight and narrow path is just they even if a person has to work, you have to be tuned into spirituality. If you're not tuned into spirituality, you get bogged down by this one, right? So even a person has to work and do other things, that's fine, right? Within the realms of Torah, within the realm of Torah, very good, right? But you got to feed your spiritual side. Even if you're tired, you got to learn something during the day. You got to be uplifted, in some ways. Not always so easy. Is it okay to enjoy physical pleasures, make life more beautiful, sleep, food, music? Well, you have to eat. You definitely have an obligation to eat, satisfy the body. Does that mean, you only have to eat seaweed and bran? I don't think so. You want to eat chocolate? Very good. You got to be careful. Stuff will kill you, right? Make you overweight if you don't exercise and all that. You're allowed to enjoy this world. I'll tell you very simple. You're allowed to enjoy this world. You have to know how. You have to have a balance, right? You have to have a balance. If you don't have a balance, you're off balance, right? So enjoying good food, nothing wrong with it. People make it into idolatry, but it doesn't have to be that way, right? You're allowed to enjoy good food. That's what we do on Shabbos, what we do on festivals, right? We eat better than we normally would during the week, to honor it and whatever. Very good. So that's important, within reason. That mean a person has to feel like they're so stuffed they can't move. No, wouldn't go that far, right? In this generation, people need to listen to music. Yeah, helps relax them. It's very high level. The Vilna Gaon says Shar HaNagina, right? The gate of music. I don't know if you'd say that today, if you would consider anything quote unquote about Jewish music today, if it's actually really Jewish or not. But okay, it's another discussion. But listen, whatever. A person likes to listen to it's kosher music, let's say. Is there anything wrong with it? Nothing wrong with it. A lot of people need it. Definitely a lot of people need it. I don't think there's any question. But again, within reason. That means someone should be listening all the time, whatever. What you're gonna say, we're a creep off generation. Why shouldn't I? Right? I wanna uplift myself, so to speak. Okay. Right. I want to feel like I'm on a high listening to music. Okay. But that there is a place for that. I'm not gonna say no. Right. But again, you don't want to get carried away with it either. Right. Bottom line, you have to find a balance. Right? You have to find a balance. Someone asks, is a psychological proof for the Torah, so it works regardless. Yeah. It's true, right? So we do believe it's true. Okay. Right? Sages are all men. Adam was a man. Moshe was a man. Right? Trust no man. Listen, coming out of Christianity, it's a hard thing because, or any paganism or whatever, because they're going to say, trusted a man. They got burnt. Okay, but you don't listen to God. Well, they thought it was God. They thought it was a God we booked. They found out it wasn't. Okay. Right? You don't lose over here. 100% you don't lose. People just get carried away I think, got to understand every little nook and cranny of something before they do something, but that's just an excuse. 100% that's just an excuse because people say, well, if I don't really fully understand it, why would I do it? Okay. We don't get into it anyway. People make all kinds of excuses, and why should I make man? So I tell people that even if God forbid the Torah wasn't true. Yeah, someone told me, when they die, they're going 6 feet under. So I said, if you're right, I hope you're right, because if I'm right, you're in serious trouble. Right? So I said, what would you find? What would happen if you found out it wasn't true? You found out the entire Torah wasn't true, you die like a dog. Poof. No offense, any dog lovers out there. Dog dies, nothing happens. Yeah. What would happen? So first of all, I don't think it's true. But even if it would be true, there's no other possible way. I don't believe there's any other possible way to live a person's life that has more meaning than doing this. Even if we don't understand a lot of it, right? At the highest level. Okay. Right? But there's no greater thing that gives more meaning to life in my actions and what I do and what the repercussions are than any other thing in the world. Even if it wouldn't be true. Right? And that was my answer. They didn't like that, but okay. Right? What's our learning Torah? The original is clear to my origin. Yeah, that's true. Right? That is true. But again, I'm just pointing out people get caught up in things that don't matter. They get distracted. The Ramchal says, you get distracted in this world. And it leads you to question, it leads to doubt, which is the worst thing a person can do, is to be in doubt. Right? And that's what Amalek brought to the world. Right? Amalek brought the idea there's no supernatural. In the same gematria, the numerical value of the letters of Amalek and Suffolk and doubt are the same. Nobody wants to be in doubt. Right? But, if a person can have doubts all around. Just by, you listen to the news to see what goes on. People can have doubts. Where's God? People die young. People are sick. Whatever, all kinds of things. Yeah. Yeah, but there's so many ways that Abraham brought to the world. So many ways to see there's a God, there's a world of design. Right? So if there's a world of design, there's a designer. Right? That's clear. Now people say, even if there's a designer, who says I have to follow the designer? How do I know that designer is true? Maybe someone else, maybe some other religion, whatever. That's different. That's a different discussion. But, at the end of the day, people make up all kinds of things to convince themselves this is what I want to do, right? Or this is what, quote unquote, they believe to be the truth, but they haven't looked into it. They haven't thought about it, right? At all. But yeah, that's when we're wiping out the memory of Amalek, that's what we're wiping out. We're wiping out this idea of doubt. This idea of doubt. We're bringing God witness to the world, right? That's what it means in short to wipe out Amalek. Somebody asks, the angel of Hashem. Okay, what about angles of distraction sent from the 3 impure heavens? Yeah, I'm going to go into that. Someone asks, when we forget who gave us the food, we can fall easy, right? Right? When you forget who the maker is, who runs the world, very easy to fall, right? That that is definitely true. But like I would say, it's a person doesn't have to look that far and be brainwashed, quote unquote, to see how logical things are, in nature, in the human body. It like begs for a person to see logic. The stars and the moon, the earth's on its axis, whatever, doesn't get too close to the sun, not too far away, many things in nature. Right? Someone would really be like an absolute atheist or whatever, it's hard to imagine. Obviously, because they never looked into it, and they don't really care, right? Even if you could prove it to them. But in general, being atheist in this world, almost impossible, right? I would say it is impossible because there's so many things that resonate that show there's order. Definitely show there's order. But yeah, person can easily forget who's in charge, and we know what happens, right? We definitely know what happens with that. Somebody asked how many physical worlds are there besides this physical one? None that I know of. I mean, God was busy before creating the world. He created and destroyed worlds. That's what he did. Okay. Where are those other worlds? I don't know. We only know this physical world. We don't know any other world. I mean, spiritual world. But as physical world, this is all we know. This is all we know. Yeah, any other questions? All right, I'm gonna stop here. I do this every Sunday, 9 o'clock Eastern time, 4 o'clock Israel time. Anyone has any questions? Find me on Facebook at Michael Chaim Kaufman, Beyond Orthodox Conversion Judaism, orthodoxconversion.com. Beyond Orthodox Conversion Judaism on YouTube. There I got videos on Q&As, Ethics of Our Fathers, Book of Leviticus. If you want to send me an email, rabbichaimkaufman@gmail.com, RBBICHAIMCOFFMAN@gmail.com. Wish everyone a good beginning of the day.